This video will help you with homework 7, which will be the valuation of Costco. First, we'll talk about how to get the data from Bloomberg, and then we'll talk about how to put it into our valuation model so that you can do both an as-is excuse me, and a final valuation of Costco. So I'm going to go to a Bloomberg Terminal, and in this case, look up Costco, U.S. equity. You're going to need 3 screenshots to help you with the valuation of Costco. The first one is you'll need the DES or description screenshot. So if you type DES once you're at Costco, this will get you the shares outstanding and current share price of the company, $106 a share. So again, to export and save a copy of the screenshot, click on the export, save screen as file, and name it whatever you wish. In this case, I'm going to name it company's ticker symbol -DES. Second screenshot you're going to need is the weighted average cost of capital. So once you're in Costco, again, just type in WACC. And this is going to be the WACC that we're going to use in our DCF valuation. Again, take a screenshot, save screen as file, cost WACC. And the third screenshot is the earnings estimate overview, EEO. Remember that when you get to this screen, it defaults to the quarterly view. You're going to need to switch to the annual view. Hit enter. So again, here we're going to get our forward sales and our forward operating profit for the model. Save screen as file, Costco EEO. And then finally, you're going to need to get the financial data. FA, financial analysis. And in this case, we're going to need income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow data. Start out with the income statement, or IS. Make sure we get the standardized format. And in this case, once I'm at the income statement standardized format, I will then go to output and dump this data to Excel. Assuming that you're in the lab and Excel is loaded on the machine, it will start the exporting process and it will open up Excel. Very important. Microsoft is going to give a security warning, and it's going to ask if it's okay to open up a non-standardized template. You need to make sure that you say yes. If for some reason it's hidden behind a window, the template will stop until you say yes and acknowledge the Microsoft security warning. And otherwise the process for exporting will stop. Here's the security warning. Yes, it's okay to open. It will open up the template and it will start downloading the data. Now remember that the data that's being downloaded here in this template is actually coming from the Bloomberg database. And you can see all the fields are being filled out. Note that some of this data is a reference to the database, which means if I open this file and leave the lab, if I don't have a Bloomberg terminal accessible, it's going to come out as errors. So what I'm going to need to do is select the whole tab by clicking on Select All in the upper left-hand corner, copy, so edit copy, or Control-C or Command-C on a Mac, Control-C on a PC, and then right-click, Paste Special Values. So what that's going to do, it's going to overwrite all of the contents as numbers so that when I save this file, I will be able to open it up outside the lab without a problem. The other issue that I'm going to have is that Excel doesn't like this pound NA. It's not going to interpret those as numbers. It's just going to give errors if it ever tries to see those as fields. So what we need to do is we need to replace all the pound NAs with zeros. So you can use the find command in Excel, either Control F or Command F on a Mac. And in this case, we want to find the pound N slash A space N slash A, and then replace them with zeros. And in this case, we'll replace all. And you'll notice all my NAs have become zeros. So that means that when I import to my model, it won't have any problems with the formulas. So finally, I'm going to save this file. Put it in the shared directory. Make sure I save it as an Excel workbook. And I'm going to call this Costco IS for the income statement. I'm going to go back to the Bloomberg Terminal. I'm going to switch to the balance sheet tab, and now I'm going to export the balance sheet data, again, making sure it's in the standardized format because our model is mapped to the standardized format. Hit Output to Excel, and it's going to start exporting the data to the Excel template. Now again, very important, when it finishes the export, it's going to take a few seconds here, then you need to make sure you go to Excel and say yes to that security warning, because as Microsoft is going to try and import it, it's going to give me the security warning saying it's in this file format it doesn't understand. Yes, it's okay. It's going to bring up the balance sheet, and again, it's going to slowly start populating the data. And similar to what we did on the income statement, once the data has been populated so that we can read the data outside the lab, what I'm going to now do is I'm going to select this whole tab. Again, copy it, paste special, values, overwriting the whole tab as numbers. And again, these database lookups are now numbers. I'm going to do the Control F, find the pound N slash A space N slash A's, and replace those with zeros. File, save as, and put it in my shared directory here as an Excel workbook. And in this case, cost balance sheet or BS. And finally, I'm going to click on the CF tab for cash flow, get my standardized cash flow data, again, output to Excel. So these are the three financial statements, again, in the standardized format coming from Bloomberg that we are going to export and use as the basis for our historical data in our model. Again, need to go back to Excel, hit yes to the security warning. Remember, the process will stop unless you continue to hit yes to that security warning. Give it a second to pre-populate all of the data. And then just as we did with the other two statements, once all the data is populated, we are going to select the tab, copy, paste special, values. These are now numbers. And finally, Control F, find all of my pound N slash A N slash A's, replace those with zeros. And I now have my cash flow data. File, save as, again, make sure I'm saving this as an Excel workbook. And I'm going to call this cost CF for my cash flow statement. So I now have my three financial statements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to my Mac, and in my shared folder, I'm going to take the screenshots and the financial data and move it to the folder I'm using for the Costco valuation. Now in this case, the valuation model that we're going to use is where we left off with the Coca-Cola financial valuation. That's a model that is on ELMS and is labeled Valuation Model KO-Final. That is the final model that we're going to use as our base to value Costco. So I'm going to open up the Coca-Cola model. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go here to the Data IS tab, which is the historical income statement data, and I'm going to overwrite the Costco data over the Coke data cell for cell. So in this case, I have my Coke data. I go back, open up the Costco income statement. I'm going to select the entire income statement tab, copy it, go to the first cell, select the whole tab here, paste special values. And because we're using the standardized template, if we paste over the entire workbook as values, and again, don't just paste special, because it'll paste relative references to the other spreadsheet, then all the numbers will be updated cell for cell with the Costco cells in the exact same cell order, which is going to be very important for our spreadsheet model. Do the same thing with the balance sheet. So in our Coke model, I now have the balance sheet. I'm going to open up my Costco balance sheet. I'm going to select my entire Costco balance sheet. I'm going to go back to our Coke model. I'm going to select the entire balance sheet tab, paste special values, again overwriting cell for cell all of that data. And finally, I'm going to do the same thing with the statement of cash flow. So go to my cash flow, exported data, select the entire cash flow tab, copy it, go to my model for Coke, cash flow, right click, paste special values, completely overwriting the data. Okay. Now I'm going to save as a copy, in this case valuation model, and this is my Costco. In this case, as I get it set up, I'm going to call this my baseline. Again, for your homework, you'll need to do the as is and the final valuation. The baseline is just another word for getting all the data ready to do the as is valuation. So once we've put in the three tabs for income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow, then what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to go to the Assumptions tab and update the assumptions. In this case, I'm going to need to overwrite the weighted average cost of capital. So that's why I took the screenshot. And the cost of capital we're going to use is the Bloomberg WACC, which in this case was 7.3%. Next, I'm going to need to make sure that I update the shares outstanding. That's going to be found off the DES screen. And on the DES screen, shares outstanding down here, shares out, 436.4. And then finally, I'm going to need to update my EEO data. For sales 1, sales 2. So again, you can see the first 2 years say estimate. The previous year was actual. So in this case, for the estimated fiscal year 2013, sales are here, 106,075. And sales to 115,149. Operating profit 3099. And operating profit 23448. And then finally, down here on the assumptions, these are the miscellaneous assumptions that are not always in the same place on the balance sheet. They're in the reference items section. So again, to get our model to work properly, since they're not always in the same place, the model is actually referring to this tab to find historical goodwill and pension obligations. So what I need to do is go back to the balance sheet, and down here you'll see a list of reference items. Generally, everything row 43 and above on the standardized template from Bloomberg is always going to export in those fields in that order. Everything in the reference items can be different, and it's not always in the same order. The two items that we're going to care about are goodwill and pension obligations. So I'm going to start out with my goodwill and basically take my historical goodwill data. You can actually take all the years, doesn't hurt. Copy that, go to my assumptions tab, and for goodwill, overwrite this, paste special values. And these are my historical years starting with 2012 working backwards. Now I have a miscellaneous data here that goes back before 2007. I can clearly clear that contents and erase that data. But there's my historical goodwill for Costco. Obviously not a lot. And again, for pension obligations, you'll see that Costco has a bunch of zeros. So copy assumptions, paste special values. Very important as we change companies to update that data, because if you don't, it will mix and match the Costco data with the Coca-Cola data, which would not give us a very good valuation. Okay, we can also check that the last reported year was 2012. So we have through fiscal 2012, so we don't need to change that. And now our final step to get our valuation ready is to go back to the ratios. Here, when we do our as is and final, note that we had solved for the revenue growth rate based on the analyst assumptions. However, starting in 2015, if you remember for Coke, we had started making changes to the ratios in our model. And now we need to kind of undo those changes so that we're set up to do a clean valuation of Costco. Note, remember we had set Coke to grow at 3% a year. So what I'm going to do for 2015 is to get my model ready to go equals 2014 and copy and paste that cell forward. So I'm just setting up my model so that I don't have any hard-coded assumptions that I did with Coca-Cola. I'm going to do the same thing for my cost of revenue. So that, again, the first 2 years, I'm going to start out by saying equals the previous year and copy and paste that forward for all 10 years. And now I'm ready to start on my valuation. Note that when I do my as is, I will have to come back to this assumption screen and get my cost of goods sold in the model to match the analyst forecast assumptions, just as we did for Coca-Cola. Note that they're not all that different than the initial starting point, but I still have to eventually match 2013 and 14 and then get my valuation as is to the current share price. That's going to be the process for setting up the baseline model. You're now ready to do your as is and your final valuation with the buy, sell, hold for Costco.